All right, welcome back to the deep dive, where we kind of take a look at some interesting topics. And today we're going to be looking at the EB2-NIW visa.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting.
Hmm.
It's a pathway to a green card for folks that can show that their work benefits the U.S.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
without a job offer even.
Wow. Okay, so it's kind of like they're saying, hey, come here and show us what you got, even if you don't have a job.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. And for today's deep dive, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of sources.
Okay.
First off, we've got the USCIS website.
Yes, the official source.
Exactly.
Gonna make sure we're getting him from the right place.
Always, always. And then we've got a YouTube video that kind of breaks down the application process in a helpful way.
Yes, helpful visuals and all that.
Exactly, yeah. And it's good to have kind of two different viewpoints on this.
Always.
Yeah. Okay, but always remember to double check with the USCIS website.
Absolutely.
Always the best source of information. They are the authority on this.
Right. That's right, especially because immigration laws can change.
Oh, for sure.
So you always want to verify, and we'll make sure to give you that link so you can double check everything.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yes.
Okay, so getting into it, the EB2-NIW, right? It falls under the employment-based second preference category, which
EB2.
EB2 most people just call it.
Yeah, EB2. And so this category, right, it usually needs a job offer.
Right, typically.
And a labor certification, which basically says, hey, there aren't any Americans who can do this job.
Right, proving that there is a need for you.
Okay, but here's where it gets a little interesting. With this EB2-NIW, you don't need that.
Yes, you can actually get those waived.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's because the government really wants people with exceptional abilities, right?
So they're kind of saying, we don't care if you have a job.
As long as your work will benefit the U.S.,
Come on in. Come on in.
we want to see what you're all about.
Right.
Interesting, okay. And they specifically mentioned physicians.
Yeah, physicians, that's a big one.
Yeah, so they can get this waiver if they agree to work in underserved areas.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, definitely a need there.
Yeah, big need. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Okay, so what does a physician have to do to get this waiver?
Okay, so they have to work full-time for at least 5 years
Okay.
in a clinical practice, and usually it's primary care or a specialized field.
Right, makes sense.
But here's the important part. They have to work in a designated health professional shortage area.
So they're really targeting those places that need it.
Yes, or a mental health professional shortage area. They also have medically underserved areas and VA facilities.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So it's not just rural areas, right? It could be urban areas, too, that just don't have enough physicians.
Absolutely, covering all the bases.
And on top of that, they need some sort of official statement
Right, an attestation.
from like a federal agency or a State Department of Health.
Yeah, saying that their work is in the public interest.
So it's kind of like another layer of like verification.
Right, making sure it aligns with the needs of the community.
So any aspiring physicians out there, if you want to make a difference and you're looking at the U.S., this is the way to go.
Could be a great option.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
so now let's talk about the actual application process.
Okay, let's dive into that.
The YouTube video, the one we were talking about, they kind of walk us through it.
Yes, step by step.
And the first step is Form I-140.
Yes, the petition for alien worker.
Yeah, so this is like the foundation.
It is, yeah. It's basically where you say, hey, this is me, these are my qualifications, this is why I think I'm eligible.
Okay, makes sense. You're presenting yourself.
Exactly.
And the YouTuber mentioned something interesting. Apparently, there's a new version of the I-140
Oh, yes.
as of April 2024,
USCIS loves to update their forms.
which I can see being a little confusing.
It can be, yeah. A lot of people get tripped up by that.
Yeah, so I'll always use the latest forms, right?
Always, always. Because using an outdated one, that's just asking for delays or rejections.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that, so always go to the USCIS website.
USCIS.gov.
That's the place to be.
Okay, so let's say we have the right form, the April 2024 edition. The YouTuber does a walkthrough of the form. They point out some of the key sections.
Yeah, which can be super helpful.
Very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you mind kind of walking us through some of the highlights?
Sure. So it starts off with the basics.
Okay.
You know, your name, address, contact info, all that.
The usual suspects.
Exactly. And then it asks for information about the petitioner and the beneficiary.
Now, for those who might not know, who are those people?
Right. So the petitioner, that's the one filing the petition.
Okay.
In a lot of EB2 cases, it's the U.S. employer offering the job.
Okay.
And the beneficiary, that's the person who would get the green card.
So with the NIW, the person is both, right?
Exactly. You're petitioning for yourself.
Interesting.
You're advocating for your own awesome work.
So anything else stand out on that form?
Well, there's a section about employment history and SOC codes, which are basically these standardized job classifications.
Okay.
And the YouTuber was a bit confused by this, which makes sense.
Yeah, because it's the NIW. There's no job offer.
Right, so why do they need all that?
Should you just leave it blank?
Well, there's some debate about that,
Okay.
but I think it's still really important to describe what you plan to do in the U.S.
Okay, so even without a job, you need to explain your work.
Exactly, because you want to paint a picture for whoever's reviewing your application.
Makes sense. You want to show them what you're all about.
Yes, show them your exceptional abilities, how your work fits into the national interest.
Okay, so it's like saying, hey, here's what I plan to do, even though I don't have a job yet.
Exactly, and here's how it'll benefit the U.S.
Interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about the form, but I feel like we need to step back and really look at what national interest even means.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's the heart of the EB2-NIW, right?
Exactly. So how do we even define that?
Let's get into that next.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so back to this whole national interest thing.
Yeah, it's a little vague, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's kind of like, what does that even mean?
Right. Like, it sounds important, but how do you actually know if your work qualifies?
Well, the USCIS, they keep it pretty broad on purpose.
What?
It's not just about filling a specific job. It's more about attracting people who can really make a difference.
So, like, you got to be more than just good at what you do.
Right. You have to be exceptional.
Okay, so we're talking like groundbreaking researchers, innovative entrepreneurs.
Yeah, artists who are pushing boundaries, people who are really moving the needle.
So if you're thinking about applying for this visa, you really got to ask yourself, how will my work make the U.S. better?
Exactly. How will it make it smarter, more competitive on a global scale?
And I guess that's where the I-140 form comes in.
Right, because that's where you tell your story.
You got to sell yourself.
Oh, you do. You got to highlight your accomplishments and connect them to this bigger idea of national interest.
So it's like you're showing them what you've done in the past.
Right.
And then saying, imagine what I can do in the future.
Exactly, given the right resources and opportunities.
So it's all about potential.
It is. It's about showing your potential contributions to the U.S.
Okay, so going back to the form, are there any specific sections that are really important for showing this national interest thing?
Well, there's the section where you describe your intended work in the U.S.
Right, even without a job offer, you got to explain what you're going to do.
Exactly, and how it fits into that bigger picture.
And this is where the evidence comes in, right?
Absolutely. You need strong evidence to back up your claims.
So we're talking publications, patents, awards.
Yes, letters of recommendation from experts, media coverage, anything that shows the impact of your work.
Okay, so basically you're building a case for yourself.
You are. A strong case.
And for physicians, they need that extra documentation about working in an underserved area, right?
That's right. They need to show they've done it or they're committed to doing it.
And remember that attestation we talked about?
From the federal agency or State Department of Health?
Right. That needs to be included too.
It's all about showing that you're serious, you're ready to make a real contribution.
So it's not just about talking the talk.
You gotta walk the walk.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the I-140, but there's another form too, right?
Yes, the I-485.
The application to register permanent residence or adjust status.
That's the one you file after your I-140 is approved.
So it's like the final step.
It is the last hurdle before you get your green card.
Okay, so two-step process, I-140 first, then I-485.
Exactly, and just like with the I-140, make sure you use the latest version from the USCIS website.
Always, always.
What kind of information do you need for the I-485?
Yeah, what's on that one?
Well, there's some personal info, like on the I-140.
Okay.
But it goes deeper into your background, like your travel history, criminal record, family stuff.
Okay, so they're really looking at everything.
They are. It's very thorough.
And you need to submit more documents too, right?
Yeah, things like your passport photos, a copy of your I-140 approval notice, birth certificate.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, your passport pages with visas, medical exam records.
Okay, so are there specific requirements for physicians on this form too?
Yes, they need additional evidence about their commitment to working in an underserved area.
So like their employment contract or a statement from their employer?
Exactly, something that outlines their position, the location, how long they'll be working there.
It seems like every step of this process requires so much attention to detail.
It does. It's not easy.
But it's for a reason, right?
It is. This visa is for exceptional people, people who are ready to make a real difference.
It's not for everyone.
No, it's a challenging pathway, but it can be incredibly rewarding.
It's a chance to really make an impact.
Exactly, and it shows that the U.S. values global talent
Yeah, it's all about attracting the best and brightest.
and using their skills to make the country even better.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from national interest to the I-140 and I-485.
But before we wrap up, I think it's important to mention the role of lawyers in this whole process.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point.
Because as much as we've talked about, we're not immigration attorneys.
No, we're not. This is just for informational purposes.
Exactly. This is not legal advice.
If you're seriously considering the EB2-NIW, you should definitely talk to a lawyer.
A good immigration attorney can really make a difference.
They can help you figure out your specific situation, make sure you have all the right documents.
And they can guide you through the whole process.
It's like having an expert on your side, someone who knows the ins and outs of immigration law.
Okay, so bottom line, if you're thinking about the EB2-NIW, get a lawyer.
Definitely a good idea.
And in the meantime, check out the USCIS website.
Always the best source of information, uscis.gov.
Bookmark it, make it your homepage.
It's your one-stop shop for everything immigration.
Okay, so that's about everything for the EB2-NIW visa. I think we covered it all.
Eligibility, national interest, the forms, the importance of legal advice.
And how this visa helps bring talented people to the U.S.
Exactly. So hopefully our listeners now have a better understanding of this pathway.
And if you're thinking about it, you know where to start.
Research, talk to experts, and make informed decisions.
And always, always check the USCIS website.
All right, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time for another deep dive into something interesting.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like having a good lawyer in your corner can be a huge help with all this.
It really can, especially with something as complex as immigration law.
Exactly. So much to keep track of.
So much it can be overwhelming.
Okay, so to kind of sum up our deep dive into the EB2-NIW, what are the big takeaways? What should our listeners really remember?
Well, I think the most important thing is that this visa is really for those exceptional people.
Right, not just anyone can apply.
Exactly. You have to show that your work is in the national interest of the U.S.
It's about more than just having a good resume.
Right. It's about having the potential to make a real impact on American society.
Like you were saying before, being a pioneer in your field.
Exactly. You got to be a trailblazer.
And you need to be able to tell that story.
Yes, a compelling narrative that connects your past successes to your future plans.
You have to convince them that your work will benefit the U.S.
And be specific about it, whether it's advancing science or boosting the economy.
Or like we talked about, improving healthcare in underserved areas.
Exactly. There are so many ways to contribute.
And of course, all of this needs to be documented.
Oh, absolutely. Every detail matters.
Use the right forms, gather all the evidence, and don't be afraid to get help from a lawyer.
A good lawyer can make the whole process much smoother.
So it's a journey, for sure.
It is, but it can be an incredibly rewarding one.
Especially for those who are passionate about their work.
And committed to making a positive impact.
Well said. I think we've covered just about everything on the EB2-NIW.
I think so, from eligibility to the forms.
The concept of national interest, the importance of legal advice.
And how this visa helps bring talented people to the U.S.
So for our listeners, we hope you've learned something new today.
We hope it's given you a better understanding of this unique immigration pathway.
And if you're thinking about applying,
Keep researching, talk to the experts,
make informed decisions.
and always, always double-check the USCIS website.
USCIS.gov.
Your best friend for all things immigration-related.
All right, that wraps up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic to explore.